Germaine Greer is one of the most influential voices of the women's movement. 30 years ago, her book, The Female Eunuch, served as a wake-up call to women everywhere. She has now written the sequel she said that she would never write. It is called The Whole Woman, and it calls for women to look for more than mere equality. She calls for the kind of liberation that would allow women to define their own values rather than conforming to those already in place. I am pleased to have her back on this program. Welcome back.
Hiya.
What have you been doing the last several years?
Well,
when did you go back to Cambridge?
I went back to Cambridge nearly 10 years ago,
right,
and taught at Newnham College for 8 years. And then now I have taken a professorship at the University of Warwick, which means I have to be on campus 2 days a week. It's a 40% appointment, split 3 ways. It's the way it goes these days. It's postmodern.
40% appointments, okay.
So 13% of me is in the Centre for the Study of Women and Gender, 13% is in the Centre for British and Comparative Cultural Studies, and 13% of me is in the School of English and Comparative Literary Studies.
All right. So you are academic at heart, and that's where
But I also
that's
run
where
this
your soul belongs on campus.
Well, also I'm a scholar, so I publish rare works by women in scholarly editions, which I finance myself. So a lot of the other hoo-ha and baz-baz that I do is to raise the vast amounts of money that kind of publishing costs. And it's never occurred to me to look for any kind of support funding, which is just as well, because I understand there really isn't any.
All right. But in fact, I remember one of the books you wrote was about women artists.
Yep, that was a long time ago.
A long time ago.
Yeah, 79 maybe.
But that's the kind of thing you're talking about.
Well, yes, I have a big archive of women artists, but I have a bigger archive of women writers, and in particular women poets. And so the last thing I published before this was not published in the United States, which upset me a bit. It was a book called Slipshod Sibyls, which either Gilbert or Gubar, I always get them mixed up, denounced as a reprehensible book, which I thought was just a gift. You know, I thought we were going to really scoop the pool, but unfortunately it didn't get published in the States at all. You can get it on Amazon.com.
They can find anything.
Yes, except I think they say there's a delay, and there's now Amazon UK. You can get it, sort of.
So,
or you can get it from me.
All right. So
because I bought up the remaindered copies, and I have about 1,000 copies.
Do you really? Do you keep them in a warehouse somewhere in Cambridge? Or?
I keep them in my workshop. I have a cliff in my workshop is constructed of copies of Slipshod Sibyls.
Yeah. And what about all these animals? What are these animals that you have there on your farm in Cambridge?
I think I decided to keep geese because I wanted to be Mother Goose. And I realized, you know where I first saw geese?
No, I don't.
I first saw geese in Yugoslavia.
Yeah.
In Serbia, in fact, on my way to Belgrade. And you know, when I was little, you read about the little goose girl, and I actually saw little goose girls with their bare feet and their string of geese behind them. And I have geese now, exactly the same sort of geese. And I have 2 dogs, which I thought I would never have.
What kinds of dogs?
They're standard poodles. And I have
any cattle?
No cattle, no cattle.
Any horses?
I did one stage. It's funny you should ask me about horses. I have just invested in 2 legs.
You have part of a horse that's a racehorse?
Yes. I'm a fourth of a syndicate that owns a filly who's gorgeous.
You wouldn't have it any other way, would you?
And a gelding he'll be useful. He's a big horse.
Well, geldings we don't think much of.
But my filly is just
it's great,
fabulous.
Huh? I mentioned in the introduction that this is not a book that you intended to write. In fact, you thought that the next generation ought to write the defining book of their generation, not you who wrote a defining book of your generation, correct?
I don't know about a defining book. There are many defining books.
Choose your own word.
Well, the thing was that I am 60 years old. It is possible that my affection for and respect for female functions, including menstruation, including lactation and so on, is actually a thing of the past already. There is a very influential young woman writer in England called Julie Burchill who has just written a furious set of attacks on breastfeeding as something that no sane woman would ever want to do, that it's barbaric and disgusting and we should all just be freed from this nonsense. And I think, well, maybe if most women feel that way, then fine. You know, then that's what the future is going to be. The future is going to be no more breastfeeding, universal implants, the breast as plaything universally, and so on. I don't want to have any part of that, but I don't have any part of that. I'm 60. I'm on my way out. But there's a lot of me around. There's a lot of 60-year-old women, and an
increasing number in terms of a percentage of the population.
Indeed true. And so all I can do is enunciate the case the way I see it and try to gather whether I'm on the money or not, really. But I don't really, I never wanted to be a high priestess. I never really wanted to write a Bible. I hated when people say you changed my life. I always say you changed your life, and if I was of any use to you, I'm very proud and happy that that should be the case. But God forbid that you should tell me that I changed your life, because one of the things I know is that women's lives are very much better than they used to be. They're nobler, they're fuller, they're more intelligently lived, and women take responsibility for their own actions. But I also know that they're tremendously difficult.
And that's the message of this book?
It's one of the messages of this book.
Okay, but what do you want people, I mean, help me understand here, when you finish reading The Whole Woman, what is it you want men and women to carry away from it?
If you remember, The Female Eunuch ended with a question: what will you do?
Right.
All I want people to do, and Americans find this very difficult. They always think that every book is a how-to book. All I want people to do is to think about these issues and argue about them and decide what it is that they think. I'm trying to point out areas of collision and stress and tension in women's lives at the moment. I'm also trying to recognize the extent to which women suffer, and I'm also wanting to recognize the huge amount of work that they do. Most women's lives are composed entirely of love and work. They have very little leisure.
So is my life.
You have very little leisure, do you, Charlie?
I don't spend a lot of time in leisure, no. It's love and work.
Well, I'm not even say that's a good thing, because I think probably people need leisure. It worries me that women don't know how to do nothing.
No, but, well, okay, but I mean, I think the secret to life is making sure. I don't know where leisure and work, you know, where one goes into the other. I mean, in a sense, if you do what you feel passionate about and you write and you are...
Listen, you'll find out when the doctor tells you if you don't stop work, he's going to have to hit you on the head with a hammer and make you lie down.
I know.
Has that never happened to you?
No, but I'm sure that I'll face that day one day. But I'm not sure that I consider maintaining your health as part of leisure either. I mean, I think your responsibility to maintain your health.
Well, lots of women don't get a chance to maintain their health because they don't have access to recreational facilities. They live in areas where they can't go out on the streets, or where they think they can't go out on the streets. Because one of the things this book argues is that one of the preoccupations of the media is to keep women frightened, is to keep them worried. You know, so they get.
I don't get that. I really don't, Germaine.
Because you probably don't read the stuff. But
well, maybe that's true. Maybe I'm just stupid, but I just don't get that the preoccupation of the media is to keep women afraid.
Well, let me explain.
Please.
Let me explain. Every day we get a story about how if you don't take HRT, then all kinds of terrible things will happen to you. Then the next day we get a story on how if you do take HRT, all sorts of terrible things will happen to you.
I don't even know what HRT is.
Hormone replacement therapy. Okay. Every woman of 60 out there knows exactly what I'm talking about.
I know what it is now. I just didn't know it by the
if you prefer.
acronym HRT.
Likewise, today, every day you read stories about dreadful things that happen to fetuses in utero if their mothers drink cola, drink coffee, don't go for a walk, do go for a walk, take too much vitamin A. It goes on and on and on and on and on, so that you're constantly feeling, if you are trying to start a pregnancy, you think, well, I've screwed it up already because I think the night we made love I had 3 glasses of wine at dinner. So here I go, I've got it wrong, I'm at fault already. Women are worrying all the time, and every story, we get the same story over and over again. To give you an example, there was a story last week that the deaths of 104 women can be traced definitively to the use of oral contraceptives. That's not a new story. We've always known that certain kinds of thromboembolic disorder were connected with the use of oral steroids. But this story was told in a completely mystifying way. 104 women over what period, what percentage of the total deaths, what percentage of the deaths in that age group. There was no way the women could understand the probability involved or anything. It was just a scare story, because the papers tell you to write the story in a way that'll get people to read it. It's got to be sensational. You can't make it reasoned or it won't be read.
Allow me this question.
Sure.
Is it what you want women to do, is in a sense to get angry, or you want women to think about the points that you're raising and find the answers for themselves?
I think I want them to get angry. I think I want them to realize to what extent they have been pushed and pulled around by the system. I got a wonderful letter from a woman who was actually a director of a company the other day, just telling me the story of how she'd had some sort of necessary health check. and they decided she had something wrong with her and kept pulling her around for 2 years until they finally decided the original assessment was actually quite wrong. But they'd wrecked her life for 2 years and also put her career on hold because she was thought to have some very strange enzyme deficiency somewhere or other. I mean, this kind of thing happens to women all the time. Women tell you, just think about how many women have had invasive surgery. How many of the abdomens of women in this country are scarred? I mean, I say in my book...
Cesarean sections, or what are you talking about?
Everything. Women get opened up all the time. Why? Martians are going to come on Earth and say there was something terribly wrong with the richest and healthiest women on Earth because they all got cut open.
So what's been
They'll say it was a ritual. They'll say it must have been a religion. Well, it's as irrational as that.
Respond to this. This is from a woman in the New York Times, all right? The review in the New York Times of this book. It is a book that is as sour as Eunuch was exuberant, as dogmatic as Eunuch was original, as slipshod in its thinking as Eunuch was pointed. Going on and on and on and on. You know, what is unfortunate about the whole woman is less that she has changed her views than that she has done such a weak job of articulating her evolving vision in her writing and thinking has grown so vituperative and shrill. You want to dismiss that at first glance, right?
She's entitled to that view.
Okay.
It's fairly original. I don't think the English commentators talked about it that way.
Okay, are they different in America than in England?
I don't read them anyway because it doesn't serve any useful purpose.
Right?
No, she's entitled to think that, but I think she's got a pretty wrong view of the female eunuch, actually.
That it was exuberant, that it was original, that it was pointed? You don't think that's fair?
Well, this book is it has the same characteristics. It's just that the situation is different. The point about the female eunuch is people think that they cried, you know, a Daniel come to judgment when that book was published. They didn't. They pissed all over it, you know.
Critics did, or everybody.
Oh, yes. Somebody
except the readers.
I can still remember somebody in L.A. saying this book should have had an editor. It's full of rubbish. And it was the readers who rescued that book. And the same thing will happen again.
All right,
it has happened again.
I've got more to say. This is from the Washington Post. It gets better. Stay with me. The bleakness is so absolute, it matches the experience of no woman I know on 4 continents. There's a curious absence of compassion for men. If they are so unfree and oppressed themselves, what about their rational feelings of sadness, bitterness, and inadequacy? The fact is, Greer's Germaine is so sweeping it scarcely allows for such nuances and often pushes her into the edges of outright silliness. And, she says, Washington Post, and yet the whole woman remains a marvelous performance. Certainly it is dark, but Picasso's Guernica and Tennyson's In Memoriam are dark too, and we recognize these as true, if partial representations of our complex human experience. The Whole Woman is the book. The author is Germaine Greer. Thank you for coming anytime.
My pleasure.
Thank you for joining us. See you next time.